Okay, guys, morning. Fantastic to be here. Very excited to be back after a couple of weeks off. I had half term, and now we're back with a fabulous person, Dave Goodfellow, who I have been following literally since the beginning of time. Well, as far as my property journey has been, he's been a massive inspiration and somebody who I've followed for a very long time. So, and over time, I've now started to work with Dave as well, so I know absolutely how fantastic he is, and in fact he manages my hotel and has just secured me 12 rooms, 65 nights. So I'm hugely indebted to Dave. He is an absolute superstar. Please guys, if you can take the opportunity to ping some people who you think would like to learn some more about how Dave has made an incredible business and how he trains people to create businesses like that. So please do ping some people to bring them in the room, and also this will be going onto YouTube and a few other platforms as well, so there will be a replay as there is here. So what we will do is we will just jump straight in, Dave. Oh, the only thing I haven't done is I haven't done one final thing that I shall do. But Dave, while I'm doing that, do you want to just give us just a quick intro to yourself, anyone who doesn't know you?
Yeah, okay, no problem at all. So thanks, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm trying to kind of, when I'm normally on Clubhouse, I'm normally not having to think about the camera on me as well, so I'm trying not to pick my nose or do something that's like, well, yeah,
at least your hair looks great, Dave. You know, at least you brushed your hair. I know Paul's in the audience and he usually goes, oh no, I haven't shaved. So at least, you know, you're looking fine.
Good. Yeah, so it's great to actually be out of the We Talk Property room as well. I don't normally venture outside of my own or our own rooms on Clubhouse, so great to be in here. Yeah, quick introduction from me. Where do I start? I suppose from a property perspective, I started in property about 13 years ago, maybe. Just kind of doing flips, making a few quid, not really knowing I was doing flips, making loads of mistakes off the back of that. Had a small buy-to-let portfolio for a number of years, got annoyed with anti-landlord taxes and such, and not being able to get people out of my properties that weren't paying. So I decided to jump into the beautiful world that is known as serviced accommodation around 4.5-5 years ago now, and it's been a joy ever since. Grown a 7-figure business across the UK. We started in Chester, but we've kind of branched out from sort of single properties going into apartment blocks and then into apart hotels, which you also well know. Now, Emma, we've used mixed strategies within this within our portfolio. So we have done rent to rent. We have bought our own stuff and developed it. We have managed other people's properties for them too, and last but not least, we are now getting into the fantastic world of apart hotels. So I think that's kind of it for me.
Amazing, thank you, Dave. And I think a key thing that is really important here, guys, that Dave and I started not too dissimilarly in time scales in the sort of this short-term rental industry. And I get so many people coming to me, and I'm sure you're the same, Dave, who says, oh, everyone else is doing this and I feel like I'm not achieving anything, blah, 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 blah. So I could look at Dave, and let's be fair, I do a bit, and go, oh my God, what have I done wrong? You know, Dave's here and I'm here or wherever. But guys, you've just got to remember that we all have a completely different journey and we're all doing different things. And Dave has got various different backgrounds. I've got different backgrounds. I've achieved different things that, you know, Dave will not have any ideas about, and likewise. So with all these things, you know, Dave is such a key one for me that I've really followed and just loved his growth and watching him. But I haven't taken it as, oh, where am I going wrong? I've taken it as, wow, what can I take from his journey and what he's learned, and also looking at where he's come before, because that has really helped me also to see my strengths and say, right, okay, well, these are my weaknesses, so where can I go and find and fill those gaps? So yeah, so that's been a very, very key for me. So fantastic. So obviously we the title of today is Airbnb Simplified, a roadmap to creating a great business for you here. So just tell us a little bit about how this has come about, Dave, so that we can put this in context.
Yeah, so thank you for all your kind words, Emma. I really appreciate it. So in terms of Airbnb Simplified, so Airbnb Simplified is a new book that I've got coming out, which should be, it's written, it's ready. I just need to work out how I market that and get it out there correctly. So I'm in the process of doing that at the moment. Now, the Airbnb Simplified ethos, I suppose, is that, you know, I've written a book that shows you step by step, or what we call the serviced accommodation roadmap, of how to start, set up, and grow a business within this arena. We've broken that down into stages where it's all in the book, and you can go in there and look at it on a step by step basis. It's not overbearing. We've tried to simplify it as much as we possibly can, to make it more attainable for people that are out there thinking, you know, how do you get into this? Because, you know, serviced accommodation, I don't see as a property strategy as such. I see it as a business. You know, the things that come with serviced accommodation are slightly different to what you would get from a, you know, buy-to-let or a HMO. So to speak, with not having tenants and having, you know, paying guests coming into your property and being reviewed by them on a daily or weekly basis. So there's a lot of things in there that helps people understand how to grow that from a business perspective, rather than it just being, you know, a property strategy.
And do you think people can, you know, buy the book and then just go away and do it, or is this kind of like what you might call a foundation to start that journey? I mean, how would you advise people to use this book when it comes out?
I think it's like anything, really. You'll find some people will pick up the book and run with it and find ways of creating their own businesses off the back of it. And then you'll have other people that use it as kind of like a stepping stone to then go off and maybe go and get a bit more education or whatnot. Yeah, I mean, there's different people in the world, isn't there? Some people will pick up a book and be able to run with that type of stuff straight away. Whereas, you know, there's other people that need a little bit more hand holding. So yeah, I think it'll be some and some. There's a lot of detail in the book. We are quite a detailed business with a lot of data. We make a lot of data-led decisions, as you'll have seen in the past, Emma. But yeah, I think it'll be some and some.
Fantastic. Well, interestingly, and I'm keen to find out actually from yourself as well. So I'm literally slightly behind you. It's pretty much nearly written, and I'm writing a book on how to find your goldmine area for serviced accommodation. And one of those elements was I found a really fantastic podcast, actually, all about how to write books for business and how to take sort of advantage of them. And one of the parts, alongside chatting to others who have written books, is having this kind of why are you doing the book? And that was kind of really powerful, because I'd started writing it for one reason, and then when I really analysed why I was doing it, there was suddenly a whole host of other reasons. And then secondly, it's how to generate some lead magnets within there. So one of the things for me, I've realised over time that I'm really keen to become a speaker. Now, obviously, that requires a journey, but I see that there's a big gap in the market for female speakers. I know they're not that reliable. So amongst other legions that I'm doing in that particular book, that was just another one to highlight professionalism, etc., etc. So this is out of interest, are you putting lead magnets within the book? Are you doing some bit.lys? Are you doing links to videos, stuff like that, so then I can find out how to do it too?
Yeah, so firstly, the first stage of the roadmap is exactly what you're writing in your book. So let's hope that they both marry up together, right? So otherwise we might both look a little bit silly. Oh. So the first stage, which is called find your SA area or find your serviced accommodation area, is all about finding your goldmine area and the elements of how you kind of pull all the data together to work out whether an area is viable or not. So let's hope that it's very similar.
And that's okay too, because I do sit with people who just do certain things, but I think all of us have valuable resources, so I'm sure it'll be great.
Absolutely. So in terms of the purpose behind the book, was to give a little bit more understanding of what we do as a business. There's a lot of stuff about our business in there, how we kind of operate, and to help others be more successful in the serviced accommodation arena. I think one of the main concerns that we have in serviced accommodation is when people, that don't really know the industry, they hear of Airbnb, they resort to, as soon as you talk about that, they think it's just antisocial behaviour, parties, stag do's, hen do's, or whatever you want to call them. People just becoming a nuisance in people's houses or next door to people's houses. And I think there was an element of trying to build out a process for people to run serviced accommodation in a professional, business-like manner. The second part of it was to kind of, help people build businesses rather than it just be a property strategy, because there's a lot more behind it than just, having guests in a house. There's so much more behind it with all sorts of different systems and automation and just running a professional business. And then at the end of that, it's, there's a reason for the book. Is to make us more visible to people and to for people to look up our training courses and what we do and help others grow as we have grown in the last sort of 4.5 to 5 years.
And that's an interesting question. Sorry, I never have a complete path. It's whenever I hear something. But what do you most enjoy? So if you could get up each day, what part of the business is it? Like the training? Is it sales? What if you could do something all day, every day? Would it be one thing, or is it always an array?
Great question. So I love selling. Selling is my passion. I was actually in a job before this for 15 years as an operations manager, then director, and I was just completely in the wrong job for years. And until I got into my own business and started selling, I mean, I was always selling myself as an operations manager, director, but once I started doing my own thing and selling myself, it was just a whole new ball game for me. And I absolutely love that part of the sale where you the relationship piece, the sell, the actually getting the revenue and creating relationships with people. And on that, the other side of things was building teams and relationships with managers or directors or wherever that might be. So for me, the main two areas that I really enjoy, that I get up every day, is one, to sell, two, to build relationships and develop people. And I think that's where the kind of training side of things comes in as well. There's nothing better in my eyes or in my book than taking on a new student, giving them the tools to be successful, and then watching them grow. I can't think of anything more rewarding than that.
Yeah, amazing. No, absolutely love that. And and interestingly, selling is the whole premise. I remember when I worked for L'Oreal, I remember that it kind of seemed a bit revolutionary in those days, that you would go have a meeting to find out what their needs were and then kind of fulfill those needs. And it was kind of like, you didn't go in, you know, the old, you know, going in and just selling. It was like, no, it needs to be, you know, a building of a relationship. And that was kind of quite a new thing for me when I first started out in business. It was, yeah, you just thought sales, that you rocked up with a nice lipstick and you just told them that it was great and all the benefits of it. Whereas, you know, what we really learned, and actually enabled me to do some really big stuff, actually. I was only looking after some of the really small grocery chains like Waitrose and Summerfield and stuff. But because, you know, I really took that on board. I'm a real, like, voracious, what I'm told, I'll just go on and do it. And, you know, I managed to get some really massive kind of deals with those supermarkets because I really worked out what it was that they needed. So that whole kind of selling and building relationships is just all intertwined, isn't it? So you can see that that is a sort of a key thing for you.
I absolutely agree. I'm dying to talk about this because it means it relates to me so much. And we've got a module in our training academy as well, where we go through what I call the 7-stage sales cycle, which essentially is just a sales cycle for any bit, work in any business, and it's just applied to serviced accommodation. One of the things that we do in there is building relationships and call it understanding the pain points of the client. So look, once you understand the pain points of that particular person or the client or the customer, then you know what to do to solve, and you just become a problem solver, right? And that's what selling for me is all about: building a relationship, understanding what they need or what would take away any sort of pain from them, put a solution in place and get the sale.
And it's often
that sounds really simple.
Well, well, it can be, but often it's not actually the product that is the sale, is it, so to speak? I know that sounds crazy, but actually, if you've solved a problem and it happens to involve your product, then fantastic. But it could be anything as long as it solves their problem. And I think that sometimes when we come with a specific product, we're so indoctrinated in considering that product that we tend to forget all the other things. And that's what I love, certainly, about being in business and being an entrepreneur. Is like you said, it's all about problem solving. And who is it, the lady that's I can't remember her name, shopping.com, and she says, I just eat problems for breakfast. And that's just great. I love that. There's no kind of like, oh, why has that happened, oh, woe me, this is terrible. It's kind of like, problem, let's just find the solution. And then afterwards, if we want to come back and make sure that that problem maybe doesn't spring up again, of course we want to come back and analyze it. But it's, you know, there's no kind of like, you know, where's the issue here? It's like, find the solution and see what we can do to you know, help them. So yeah, I absolutely love that. So are we able to hear any more of these 7 stages of sales cycle? Is there another particular part that, you know, might be really helpful to people?
Well, I'm not sure if I can share too much.
Or just in general, Dave.
Well, look, there's a number of stages to the book. I'll try and remember them off the top of my head. So there's the find your serviced accommodation area. There's setting up your unit, so you know how to set it up compliantly from a design perspective, and also to be compliant with regulations that are coming in now or likely to in the future, and we try and plan ahead for that too. We've got a marketing one, so basically once you've got your serviced accommodation unit set up, then you've got to sell it, right? You've got to be able to get it out there onto the platforms. It's got to look right, how to do that properly. There's an art in that in itself. So we go through a module on how to do that and how to market your property in the most efficient way or effective way. There's a better word. And then, you know, there's a small, when you're smaller, so they got 1 or 2 units, you need different kind of setups to what you would need as a 7-figure business. So we kind of give you a smaller size business setup, and then we move on to kind of like a larger size setup, which involves kind of more automation, systemization, using different kind of applications to run your business from anywhere in the world, as long as you've got a 3G connection. And then we go on to teach you how to recruit the right people, and how to do that by recruiting virtual assistants. We've got a whole module on how to do that effectively. And, you know, because one of the main things is you don't want, well, one of the main things, in my personal opinion, you want your business to kind of be set up and then to run, and you to be working on your business, not in it. You don't want to be doing the day-to-day tasks that times that. You want to be working on how you can grow your business, where your next sale is going to come from, where's your development coming from, what are the things that are going to grow that business to the size that you want it to be. So we go through all that sort of stuff as well. So hopefully that gives you that scratches the surface of some of the stuff that we've got coming up in the book.
Amazing. I love all that. And it reminds me, I'll have to speak to you a bit more about VA recruitment, because I run a very useful business helping people recruit VAs as well, if they want it a simple way as well. So marketing. I think this is a really interesting question. So you have a lot of people, don't you, who, you know, set up a property and then just chuck it on booking.com. I know when I started my business, I viewed it very differently, and I really created a brand. How do you feel about that? Do you think you need a brand, and we should spend time and effort and potentially money on that? Or do you think we can just go and, you know, and just literally set it up and chuck it on booking.com?
Great question. I'm going to take this from two slightly different angles. You know, some people that are getting into serviced accommodation as kind of like a side hustle, or you know, that it's not going to be their main business. They might have a job where, you know, serviced accommodation is their top up, or their top up to their income. We'll look at things slightly different to what somebody wants to build a business or an empire or whatnot. So if you are the first person I talked about, where it's a side hustle, you know, top up kind of thing, then I'd say, is the brand necessary? Well, you would probably sit on somebody else's brand to sell that for you. So likes of, you know, Sykes Cottages, Ho Seasons, No Key Stays over here. So I waved them, but you can't see me, can you?
Some people can.
Can they? All right, okay. So I'll wave. Nobody can see me. Some people can. Yeah, so I think that is very important. It's very, it's not so important to have a brand behind you if that's the case. Albeit if you're looking to, you know, build a business and an empire, you've got to start at the beginning with your branding. It's got to be there right at the beginning, so you understand where your brand's going. And we do a branding exercise as part of one of our business builders that we with our students. And that understands I'm going to simplify this right now, but it understands their core values. You know, we look at where they want to be in 10 years' time. We look at, you know, what are their core values for the business? What does that need to look like? Very much a kind of big business mentality for a startup. But I always think that, you know, when you're starting a business, you should always have that big business mentality at the start, rather than trying to pick it up halfway through. So yeah, we make sure that when we're doing the branding, even down to picking a name for the client, we'll help them do that too. It's really important to get those brand values, those core values, and the kind of end goal baked in right from the beginning.
And with that, that's a really interesting sort of thought process there. Do you think that the brand should reflect your core values, or what you believe your end, say, avatar or client would want?
What a great question. Great question. So I believe that if you are a business owner, okay, and you have a particular set of core values, if you're not building out your brand to suit those core values, your business will not grow. because it won't suit you. It won't suit you as the founder. It won't suit you as the owner. And look, things change over a period of time, and what happens now and what happens in 10 years' time could be slightly different. But I think you've got to start with you, especially if you're the owner, founder of a business. That business initially is going to be built around you, right, and what you're about. So I think it's really important to make sure that those core values go right through the business. Everybody that you take on, the goals you set, everything that you are looking to do within that business has to be around those core values or relate to those core values in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I love that, because it's I certainly found that a few of my core values, certainly in the early days, were a bit progressive. And I'm not sure they necessarily reflected my clients, but I just can't let them go.
Can you give us an example of that, Emma?
Well,
what do you mean? What do you mean by progressive? What were they?
Well, so my eco-conscious. So when I first started up my brand, it was, I kind of wasn't as clear, 4.5 years ago, who my avatar was. I mean, I had a bit of an idea, and I wasn't as clear. I mean, I knew that it was contractors, but I wasn't as clear what a contractor was until I had them for a few years and then really knew what they were like. So I just thought that, and all the big companies were all talking about eco. So I thought, my personal ethos of really everything about what I do is, is eco. Like everything here is eco for me. And that, as far as what I understand, it could be wrong to others. But when it came to the contractors and whether they cared less, whether there was natural washing up liquid or who gives a crap loo roll, I'm not sure they really gave two hoots.
Who gives a crap loo roll? What?
It's a really good, it's like a bamboo loo roll. I mean, these things are so important to me. So, at that stage, I went through a period of being quite disgruntled about it and a bit kind of disappointed. But then I just realized that it was my core value, and inherently that was part of me, part of my business. And whether that particular person appreciated it or not, that's whatever. So it doesn't mean that we were going to stop it in our business. It doesn't mean that we were going to stop using Ecosia. So Ecosia, for instance, is another really key part of my business, where that is, instead of Google, you use Ecosia, and every time I think you do like 40 searches, they plant a tree. Completely free. A tiny business can do it. So like, why wouldn't I continue to do that for my business? But whether that affected the end consumer is a different matter.
Okay, so I think you've got kind of two different things going on there. You've got external factors and internal factors, right? So your internal factors for you is to make sure that what you're doing and what you're producing is going to be eco-friendly and da 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 da. Whether the end user kind of buys into that or not doesn't really matter, because it's part of your core value internally. What will make you more comfortable with your branding and your business will be the way that you're talking about it now. Okay, so the way that you put yourself forward and talking about your eco-friendly stuff. I've seen it with the apartments down in Folkestone. It's been very well thought out, by the way, and how the certain elements that you've put in there that relate to your core value of the eco-friendly stuff. It's great, right? So you feel as a business owner or as part of that apart hotel that you're actually giving back in some way, and that's part of your inner core values. So yeah, I think there's an internal and external. So you've got to appeal to your external customers, but you've also got to have that internal core value, brand recognition, brand values that fit both internally and externally.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I hadn't necessarily looked at it in that way, but yeah. And also, what's nice about, for instance, the eco is it is so all-encompassing. It can be anything from, so as I talked about, I'm just buying a cafe business at the moment, and part of the whole eco that I'm putting into that is community, and that's been really really interesting, actually, thinking about how that can can happen. And then of course it becomes serendipitous, and that's a whole nother clubhouse room. So we won't go into that. Okay, so we've got potentially just talking through these areas that I know you're really skilled at, because I'm really keen on understanding, you know, property business and how we can really incorporate business into making these successes. So let's say, you know, if we're not talking about people now that just want a side hustle, because we're now talking to people who really genuinely want to be growing their business as a serviced accommodation provider. So let's say we've got a brand, and you know, we've sat down with you and we've got our name or whatever it is. Where do you feel marketing goes, and how quickly, I think this is a really key one for me, how quickly do you feel we should go from, you know, most of us start with booking.com, Airbnb, and then you know, I've done all the basics, you know, walking around the sites, you know, trying to look, you know, put a bit of lippy on because clearly I'm the only woman on the site, you know, through to, you know, taking photos of vans in the hotel last thing at night, looking like some dodgy person, you know, getting in and out of your car, through to kind of social media. So do you feel that there's a progression, or do you think you should just be like hard in right from the start?
Another great question. I don't know why I'm sounding surprised. I shouldn't sound surprised. Another great question. I think with this business, with serviced accommodation, right? You've got to start as you mean to go on, but you've got to be realistic about how you start and mean to go on, right? So the way I look at it, Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, Furbo, all the kind of major players in that basically market your property for you. You should always use them as much as you possibly can to, and I call it they will give you the foot in the door, okay? But if you have a booking that has come from Airbnb and they rebook through Airbnb, that is just crazy. Okay, so what we always from the start used Airbnb and Booking.com as our foot in the door, and then we've made those customers our customers, so that we take them away from Airbnb and Booking.com and we make them our own customer, and that is key to growing this business, right? So the amount of money that Airbnb and Booking.com spend on marketing and advertising, you're never going to compete with that. Okay, you're never going to compete with it from a SEO perspective, from a, you know, Facebook marketing, from all that sort of stuff. You're never going to compete with it. And we've tried this, by the way. So we've put a lot of money into trying to compete with them, and the amount you spend on the marketing ends up being counterproductive. Ends up being more than what you'd spend on their fee. Okay. So always use them to get your foot in the door. Now, it's very simple. When they're at your property and they've stayed for the first night, communicate with them. Get somebody to pick up the phone, speak to them, and rebook them. Ask them what they're doing in the area. What are they there for? What are they looking for? Create a CRM, get their details in the background, and use that to then promote your own services to them direct in the future for a discount. So that's the first thing with marketing. Use the OTAs, or online travel agents, for people who don't know what that means, to get your foot in the door, then turn their customer into your customer. That's the simplest of ways of doing it. And there's all sorts of different things you can do around marketing, you know, making sure you've got a nice website that's easy to book, the click of a button, so there's no kind of you don't lose people through that. And the reason why, you know, like Booking.com and Airbnb do so well is because their platforms are so simple to use. You know, you type in a name, you type in where you want to go, within seconds you've got a load of properties, and it's easy, click, done. You've got to make that path of resistance as easy as possible for them to book on your website or on your whatever it is that you've got going on. But there's so many different ways to market that, you know, and I'm not a marketing professional. It's one of the things that I am looking to develop myself on at the moment, marketing. Brand setting up the brand and all that sort of things. I think we've got down to, we do really well at. But then the other side of it, I think there's an art to marketing, which I haven't conquered yet, but I will do at some point in time.
Fantastic.
And I hope that answers the question. I went on a bit there, didn't
Yeah,
I?
no, I like that. And I think it is, key to not forget, inherently what you're doing is to try and get bums on beds. And I think, sometimes we want some really crazy, great solution, but inherently it's doing what you can do. And for me, I wasn't a massive great marketeer, so just practical things were the things that I did. But I know there are others that I talk to and follow, and equally, and they do a lot of online marketing, because that's their history, that's where they come from, and that's where they work really successfully. So I don't necessarily think you can just do one thing, can you? It's kind of like what fits with you, what works for you, and then go and jump on that. So yeah, so I think that
absolutely. And I think with marketing as well, it's kind of one of those parts of the business where it can be very difficult to relate sort of time input, money input to actual result. It's most parts of the business you can relate a very easy KPI to X, Y, and Z, and it gives you an answer. Whereas marketing can be a little bit more of an unknown phenomenon. Sometimes it does really well. You do the same thing again the next month, and it doesn't do anything. So it's one of those things that I always say in business, that marketing can be it can be hit and miss, but for no particular reason at all.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm aware of time, and I really want to cover off a few more bits in here. So pushing on through, so we've sort of worked through the formula of setting up a business, and then obviously business planning is just so key. And certainly in my business at the moment, there's a whole a few things that are going on, and there's definitely a lot of business planning. And in fairness, each different business requires a different view, I suppose, a different path to be taken in that business planning. So yeah, can you give us sort of any thoughts to people on how they might do business planning, because I feel that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. It's two huge words, isn't it? Business planning. I mean, you couldn't be much more vague. So is there any way you can sort of help us
Yes.
sort of filter that down?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to kind of, I have a very simple mindset. Now that may sound weird, but I like to keep things simple. And I have looking at people in the audience, they might get a bit bored of this, but I've mentioned this before. I have a very simple analogy that I use when it comes to business planning, but then we back it up with some stuff that I'll give you a few pointers on where to look for these at the end of it. So for me, I use a sailing analogy. Okay, if you're going to go somewhere, whether that be across a pond or to the other side of the world or across the Atlantic Ocean, you need to have a destination, right, or a location of where you're going to end up. Yeah, and part of that is, could be then related to a business. So what do you want to do in 10 years' time? I always use a 10-year plan. So where do you want to be in 10 years, and what is that destination? So similar sort of thing. Now, if you're going to go on that journey, then you have to have the right, firstly, so if you're going to go across a pond, you're going to use a small boat, right, with maybe a couple of paddles on it. If you're going to go across the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to need something a bit more substantial than that. So you start with your boat, then you have to have a team of people to run that boat, so the captain. We all know that anything within business is never a straight line. And it's the same with a sailing boat. You set sail, you go off course, somebody has to bring you back on course to get you to where you want to be, right? Because the winds change, the storms change, the sea might be in a slightly different way, so on and so forth. So what kind of things do you need to do with that journey to make sure that you're going to get there? But one, you have to provide it with the right team and a leader to get you back on track or whatever. You have to store it with the right fuel. You have to put the right food in it to get you across. And this all relates back to your 10-year plan. So when we're 10-year planning, we put a stake in the ground, right? This is where we want to be in 10 years. We then revert that back to 5 years, 3 years, and then we do a 1-year plan. The 10 years is very vague. So for me, it's sell my business for £100 million in 10 years. Okay, that's my 10-year plan. 5 years, it's a little less vague. 3 years, a bit more detail. 1 year, lots of detail. Where are we going to buy our properties? What type of people are we going to put in them? What's our budget every month? How much do we need to make every month in revenue to get to that? How many properties do we need? What type of properties do we need? What's the criteria of property that we need? It's all very detailed, okay? And I think that kind of covers that side of things. Now, what we also back that up with is a little bit more structure. So if you read a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, so the entrepreneurial operating system, is what we kind of back that up with, and we use that the detail within that to break down the 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plans to make sure that we manage the business in a certain way to get to those goals.
Very good. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I love, for me, I think you and I definitely follow the same path. And for me, I learned it through Bob Proctor, huge fan. Obviously, he's not with us anymore. But, we tend to go, don't we, for these, either a goal where we've done it before. Well, that's not a goal, is it? Or we then go for a goal where we think, if I did this and if I do this and if I do this, then I'll be able to get that. So that's kind of like you said, your yearly goal, you can work back from it, and this is where we're going to go. But what we need to really grow and to become different human beings and to change the world, whether it's the world or our world or, whatever world we want to be in, that's having a goal where we have no idea how we're going to get there. And I think that's absolutely, tremendous. And it's completely changed my life and where I'm going to and the world that I live in, because I have to be thinking about things in a totally different way and being more open and being more gutsy and talking to people that I would never talk to. But because you suddenly have a totally different goal and a totally different way forward, you've basically got to become the person you want to become. Because otherwise you just remain that person, you remain the same person. And unless you're growing inherently, like anything in nature, it is dying. So it is all about growth. So I love that you've got this huge, big goal, which I know you do, because, I follow you. But I think, that's absolutely tremendous. So just to kind of draw this discussion sort of all together, obviously there's so many parts of running a business and we haven't even touched on hardly any of them. But you did talk initially about really, loving the sales and loving the building relationships and really having this sort of people development as well. So as far as, going back to people wanting to build their SA business and how they might look at doing that, where do you feel, most people will start off with one person, won't they? Themselves. I mean, I did that. My very first one, I did everything. It was horrific. I'm rubbish at cleaning. I'm rubbish at ironing. I'm no good at a lot of those things, but I could not wait. It was a huge motivator to get second and third so that the business could then pay for all those other things. So, as far as looking at having a team, where do you advise people to kind of look at that? Would you, I know we spoke about having you spoke about your sailing model, but it can also be quite scary thinking about having a team of people.
Yeah, great question again. So business is all about people, right? So it's all about, you can have the best software, you can have the best systems in place, you can have the best processes in place, but if you haven't got the right people in place to use those systems, procedures and processes, then what have you got? Well, you've got nothing, basically. So in terms of getting the right people on board, There's a number of different ways we do this. In the earlier days, not in the earlier days, I'd use a slightly different dynamic tool that I'd use now. But I use I forgot what it's called. The contribution compass. So I use a piece of kit now, which is like wealth. You've heard of wealth dynamics and things like that, which are more well known. But I use one called the contribution compass. So when we're looking to build our team, and the different people that are within our team, they all have to fit within as much as we possibly can.
Who does that one, by the way, the contribution compass? Is it?
Well, I get that from Julie Hogbin, but it originates from Australia, I think. But Julie Hogbin is the person in this country that I use to do that. She was part of she has been part of We Talk Property in the past. So look her up on there maybe. But the contribution compass helps you, pigeonhole's the wrong word, but it kind of helps you pick out the right people that are going to come and work with you at certain levels of your business. So for example, you don't want two of me in a particular role within the business, because we would just then, visionary salespeople, lots of ideas, but definitely need somebody to sit there and put the lead on me and pull me back sometimes and say, well, hang on a minute, Dave, what about this, and this in the background? Oh, forget about that. We're going to go do serviced accommodation on Mars next year, that sort of stuff. You definitely need somebody that's the opposite of you, that brings you back down to earth, a bit more of a detail person that looks at the insight and the numbers. Or what you'd probably call an integrator in the business. If you've read some of Gino Wickman's books, Rocket Fuel, your visionary and your integrator. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. But you can do that by using things like the contribution compass to help you build your team. And again, building those relationships once you've got your team and giving people the right tools to succeed is massive.
Amazing.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Absolutely. I mean, we could go on and on about that topic. It gets much bigger, but I'm very aware of time, and we've already got some a couple of great questions from the audience here, and lots of very positive feedback for you as well. So Scott is asking, would serviced accommodation be a safer? Oh, is it okay if we ask you some questions? You don't mind, do you?
No, I've got to go now, so I'll see.
Stop it.
Yeah, I've got to be gone by about 10 o'clock. That's not the right time.
1 o'clock. We're on track.
1 o'clock. Yeah.
We're on track for that. Don't you worry. I'm pretty good at timekeeping. So would serviced accommodation be a safer option instead of buy-to-let in regards to getting money up front, and guests don't have the right to stay like tenants?
Could you just repeat that question?
Yeah,
again?
I don't know, Scott, if you're around, and let me just see if he wanted to ask that question. I now can't find him, but that doesn't mean he's not here. He said, would SA be a safer option instead of buy-to-let in regards to getting money up front? I suppose that means bigger money, and the fact that guests don't have the right to stay like tenants. He's asking if it's SA is a safer option.
Well, again, big D word, it depends, right? So is it a safer option? I would say no, it's not a safer option. Serviced accommodation is a whole different animal to buy-to-let. If you want safe, I don't think safe and serviced accommodation go in the same sentence, to be honest, unless you are, well educated in it and understand it, all the intricacies that go behind it. I mean, we have this analogy about the SA iceberg, where people just straight away revert to like cash flow and how much money you make in serviced accommodation without looking at beneath the iceberg, which is all the operational responsibilities that you have that go with it. So no, I wouldn't put safe and serviced accommodation in the same arena. If you want safe, stick to buy-to-let. Do we get money up front in serviced accommodation? Well, yes, we do sometimes, and in other times, no, we don't. So if you're working with Situ, Silverdor, Comfy, with some of the bigger SA agencies, then they have a 30-day term. Some may even have a 60-day term. So it can be fantastic. I'm very good for cash flow. Then on the other hand, you just need to be able to understand how to cash flow a business, and within those timescales too. So, in answer to your question, safe and serviced accommodation, not in the same sentence.
I like that. I like that. Okay, and James has asked, what would it take to sell your business for 1 billion instead of 100 million? He says, I don't doubt you'll hit the 100 million target. I'm interested in your thoughts if you were to scale everything to a completely different level. That's the reason for the question.
Scalability is all, again, it's just all about setting new stakes in the ground, right? So I would just look at my numbers and work out what it would take to sell it for 1 billion and go from there. I think my goal is to kind of, by the time I'm in my early 50s, be have a family office and be lending money and to startups and entrepreneurs and coaching them. That's my goal. So I think serviced accommodation is kind of a stepping stone for me to be able to do that. So I wouldn't want to sell it for 1 billion. I'd like to sell it for 100 million. And yeah, so great question, James. Thank you for the question. But again, it's just about moving the goalposts and setting them up in a slightly different way and working out what that would have to look like.
Amazing.
Within a certain time frame, obviously.
And so with that, this path of you going down there, so obviously you've got the the serviced accommodation, you've got your serviced accommodation, you manage serviced accommodation. Are you looking at this as growing from the roots up, or are you seeing acquisition coming in through this as well?
So in terms, what do you mean in terms of, are we going to be, what kind of strategy have we got?
Yeah, so to get to your stage, so obviously you've got your 1 year, your 3 year, but you're not necessarily, I mean, obviously we can do that, but it may not be. So for me, I've got big goals, but I just know that my business alone is not going to get there. I don't have necessarily the skills in the time scale that I have. So for me, part of my goals is going to be some acquisitions in there.
I see. So acquiring other businesses and stuff like that. Yeah, look, I'm not open to that. It's not something I've really thought about. No, I always kind of use a 70-20-10 rule within my business. So 70% of my time is going to be focused on X, 20% on X, and 10% on X. So in the future, our business will be 70% focus will be on developing our own stuff. So we've got more operational control over that. So developing apart hotels, going down to our apart hotel this afternoon for my first site visit, which started last week down in Llandudno. But I'm going to build out 70% of my time, and our business will be on ownership. 20% will be on rent to rent, and 10% will be managed in the future. Now, the reason for that is I know that from a sales perspective, when I'm selling the business, if I've got an asset base and an operating company, I can get multipliers on that. So it's all worked out in the detail.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And oh yes, sorry, I'd forgotten my question. Another thing that I'm really interested in, obviously we've just come out of COVID, and most of us were able to run our business in a correct manner, which enabled it to go forward. And obviously it has been quite sort of volatile as well. So we've had like crazy, masses of bookings, and then kind of a little bit of a drought. And then I know at the moment there's, some of us are definitely seeing, a lack of future bookings. And you can sort of start the month, or, I know for us in May, it was looking very light at the beginning of May, and then we ended up having a pretty good month. So what do you do in your business to kind of help flatten that scary curve, which can cause, such a lot of sleepless nights? And for me, I feel it's really key that, there's risk, and then there's like, too much stress. So how do you kind of formulate that and obviously advise others as well?
Yeah, so great question. In terms of the serviced accommodation market, I think there's levels for certain areas where you have to apply different strategies to those areas. So for example, you might have a core of, lower level bookings that are longer term, maybe over your 28 days, you're not paying your VAT. You might have then that built up with some leisure stuff. You've got like little avatars or niches to every single marketplace that will come into play at different times of year. I think there's always a really good, should always have a really good kind of direct booking from contractors and places like that. And where you want to be within serviced accommodation is what I call the sweet spot, where you're kind of 4 days in the week have got people that are traveling for business, weekends are for leisure. And if you can kind of build that in to your business, then that always is a good leveler. I think in terms of being able to deal with the stress, in terms of being able to deal with ups and downs, look, serviced accommodation is a seasonal business. If you want straight lines, just in case nobody saw me do that apart from, people on Clubhouse anyway. If you want a straight line, it's not serviced accommodation. Go and do something else. There's seasonality within this business. There's ups and downs. You'll always have ups and downs within this business. But it's how much there is of a curve in those ups and downs, which makes or breaks a business, I suppose. So yeah, it's about filling those curves with as much kind of direct, longer term business stays or contractor stays, as well as getting you kind of high level leisure stays that bump your revenue up as well.
Absolutely.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a 12-month cycle, isn't it? Don't start your business in November and be surprised that you haven't made any money. Yeah. Look, so it is really key.
One of the things I always say to clients that come on with us at the beginning is don't expect to hit the ground running. It's a 6-month process. 6-month process before before your business is kind of settled, and then we can start building it up from there. And look, you see exactly the same at the Apart Hotel in Folkestone. It's built over a period of time. It's got bigger. It'll only grow over a period of time.
Amazing. Dave, we're literally top of the hour. How can people come and find you?
Easiest way to find me is probably on Instagram. The link's at the top of the room. If anybody would like to have a chat with me, I'm more than happy to do so. You can click my link on there. There's a Linktree link at the top of that, which gives you some free stuff to do with serviced accommodation or business building. And then also there's a link on there to book a call with me if you feel like you want to. So happy to have a chat with anybody. Also, I'm on every morning, Monday to Friday, in the We Talk Property Room from 7:30 till 8:30. So come along there, join in and have a chat in there too.
Amazing.
Everybody's welcome.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dave. That was awesome. Really great information. And just as a reminder, everybody, this will be on YouTube as well. And there'll be numerous YouTube videos, the long one, and then lots of shorts. And that's at Emma Howitt Pure Abode. So do go and find that too. We shall be back next week. And tomorrow I also have Mind the Property, where I'll be back with Lee Rubeck, who as an absolute, has completely transformed my life as far as mindset goes. So we'll look forward to that one tomorrow evening at 7:30. Thanks a lot, Dave. Take care and look forward to catching up very soon. And thanks so much, everyone who asked the questions and was here supporting us. Take care, guys.
Thanks for having me, Emma. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.